Okay, welcome back to our teaching on the spirit of man. I believe this is number 7, and on this teaching. Now, those of you on YouTube, I just want to encourage you. YouTube is beginning to censor us more and more. Had one video removed for some reason. And I don't know when this is going to happen. And so if we are removed, you can see us on our Brighton channel and 15-Minute Truce on Brighton. And I invite you to go there. We're going to be updating that channel very soon. But the censorship is part of the beast system, and it is just increasing. So I'm not surprised that we've been censored. I grew up in a time period, where there was no censorship. When, if you wanted to see people that were afraid of truth, you look at the Russians, the old Soviet Union, and Pravda was noted as the mouthpiece of the Communist Party, and they only allowed what they wanted people to hear. And I remember, as a matter of fact, a Russian head of a school complaining that the problem with parents was they were undoing their work at school. And the parents were saying, well, we were just correcting the lies. But the state hates that. A communist party hates any dissent at all and anybody speaking truth against their truth. And so they would censor people terribly. And we used to say, yeah, that's one of the signs of a communist system. They're afraid of the truth. And one of the most powerful tools that we had in those days was something called Radio Free Europe. How many of you remember that? Yeah, and we would beam programming to Eastern Europe that was just normal programming. It was just repeats of normal evening news here in the States and in Europe, Western Europe. And the communist people have learned, because ex-people from the communist bloc that have moved here have talked about it and said the only way they knew what was really going on in the world was to listen to Radio Free Europe, not to the communist system, not to the official party. So when they censor people and they start kicking you out more and more and more, it's going to cause people to migrate to free spots, to the places where they know there isn't a state agenda. And right now on YouTube and other places like it, anything Google, it is a state agenda that they're pushing. So I'm not going to fit the state agenda. I'm going to tell the truth. And if they don't like it, well, I guess they'll kick me off, and we'll meet you on Brighton, and that will be our Radio Free Europe. And so I encourage you to go to Brighton and look at our 15-Minute Truce there. We're going to be working on updating that as quickly as possible so that we can spend most of our time there, okay? Lord bless you in that and in watching these videos. We ask the Lord bless you and give you insights and knowledge beyond what you knew before. Okay, part 7 of the Spirit of Man. Now, this is a study on the Spirit of Man. It's not a terribly in-depth study. That would take some time because we're talking about hundreds of different verses and usages. I'm only hitting high points. I'm not going through all the different forms of the nouns. I'm just giving you an overall, a overview of the uses of these words and to get some insight into our human spirit and into the spirit that is on all living things and to the spirit that is on our pets, our animals. Now, we've talked about in the Hebrew 3 words used for spirit, and they're used interchangeably, somewhat loosely, but they don't all mean the same thing. So if you look closely at how they're usually used, or key verses, it will give you greater insight into what was meant in the usage of that particular word. The first word in the Hebrew, just a little reminder here, is the word nephesh, Strong's number 5315. And the Greek equivalent word is Strong's number 5590 for your notes. And it means a breathing creature, a soul self, life, a person, and an appetite, according to Brown, Driver, and Briggs. It generally is speaking of your soul and everything that goes along with a soul. The next word is chai. It's Strong's number 2416 in the Hebrew. The Greek equivalent number is 2222. It means living, moving water, a wind, breath. Excuse me. Sorry, I overshot there. Not wind. It means moving water. It means alive. And it speaks of everything that is alive, whether plants or animals. Chai is the spirit of life. Again, whether in plants or animals, it doesn't matter. The next word is the Hebrew number 7307, ruach. It means a wind, a breath, a mind, and a spirit. It also denotes animation and vigor. So the strength to move your body, to animate. Its Greek equivalent number is Strong's number 4151. Now, last time we talked about number 2416, which is chai. We started talking about 7307, which is ruach, and I'd like to continue there. Now, we talked about Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 21, which tells us that the spirit of man goes up, but the spirit of animals goes down to the earth. The spirit here is the Hebrew number, or Hebrew word, ruach, Strong's number 7307, denoting a spirit, a mind, something that can animate a body. It is not talking about plants. Plants do not have a mind. But animals do. And that mind usually is just responding to instinct. That's also what their soul will do. But their soul also responds to appetite, or a learned appetite. It changes. Their mind sets an animal on the course of everything that pertains to that animal. Their mind pulls up their instincts and directs the animal so that it can live, so that it knows how to act, so that it will respond to instinct. So you'll see a cat, even a kitten, play creep up, right? Because their instinct is to creep up on a prey. I've seen baby German short-haired pointers, barely weaned, taken out and just barely able to stand, and put in front of a bird cage, a big of pheasants or pigeons we used to use, and the instinct, their mind would take over, and their instinct would come in, and they would point. They'd go right like that and point at a bird. They had no idea why. They were just responding to instinct. Their mind directed them to do that. Their spirit. Okay? But Scripture tells us in Ecclesiastes 3:21, also in Ecclesiastes 12:7, that the mind or spirit of an animal, when they die, goes to the earth. It dies with the body. It dies with the body. But the mind or spirit with the soul glued to it of man goes up. Now, many people ask, well, what's it going up for? What do you mean it goes up? Nobody could ascend unto God until Christ was sacrificed. And not everybody's going to ascend unto God. Many people, most even, are going to go to a place or in a time of punishments. So why does it go up? Well, because don't you know, everybody goes through the valley of the shadow of death to meet before the Lord for their great white throne judgment. That's not a one-time event. That's ongoing every time someone dies. People who have had near-death experiences or death experiences have talked about the valley of the shadow of death. My dad, before he died permanently, he went down that valley till the doctors revived him and it brought him back. My mom ran out of the room when he told us where he was at, because she knew once you see that valley, you're bound for it again. She knew he was going to be going down it again. He was thrilled, though. You see, he feared no evil, because the Lord's rod and staff comforted him there. And he was excited to be flying without an airplane. I can understand that. So he was zooming down this valley. Why? Because at the end of it is Christ. At the end of it was the angel of the Lord before Christ. And it would determine your destination. Before Christ, you were either going to punishments or you were going to a place called paradise. Both of them different dimensions, but not heaven yet. Because no one could ascend unto God yet, because Christ had not been sacrificed. But today, if you are covered by the sacrifice of Christ, when you go to that place for a distribution and to determine where you're going to go, you either go to heaven or you go to the place of punishments. Many people have talked about dying and going down that valley, coming up to a big burning ball of light that at first they realize, wow, this is pure love. And then all of a sudden a terror overcomes them. And they go into it and it burns them. They fly out of it to fall. And they said in the natural, it looks like they're falling tens of thousands of feet. But even as they begin their fall, they can look down and they see millions upon millions upon millions of people in a giant pit of hopelessness. And they said the worst part about the whole place was the whole spirit there was hopelessness. There's no way back out. And I can add to that and say there's no way out except the way in, which is Christ. They went through Christ in judgment and were burned and then fell into the pit. But then somebody revived their body on the other side. In this one book that talked a lot about this, it was a heart doctor, would revive them, bring them back, and they would go back up and then through the fire again. And then they would be awakened on their back on a treadmill, and the doctor pumping their heart, and they'd scream at the doctor, "Don't let me go." This one man went, what, Bev, 3 times? And each time he came back more desperate than before. "Please don't let me go. Don't let me go back there." And then and the doctor interviewed him afterwards and then wrote this book from a lot of experiences like that. Very, very interesting. So the spirit of man goes up. Why? Well, to determine where you're going to go. To determine if you're going to go to the right hand or the left hand of the Lord. If you go to the right hand of the Lord, he's going to say, "Welcome, O good and faithful servant, into your reward." If you go to the left hand, you go into the place of punishments to be punished for a time. until you have paid the last of all that you owe. Then you'll go back through that fire to be redeemed of the Lord. So in answer to the questions many have asked, well, what about my pet? Well, your pet, soul and spirit that are tied together, just like our soul and spirit that is tied together, goes back to the earth, and that's the end of that. But your soul and spirit goes directly to the Lord. And there's some, and some beloved brethren of mine, that believe in soul sleep. I don't believe in it, and I believe the precedence is very clear here in Scripture. Why? Because you go up. Well, for what? Are you going up to go to sleep? But doesn't Scripture say that you're asleep, and at peace in the ground? No. It's just a metaphor for what it looks like with your body. Looks like your body is asleep. They're just laying there and their eyes are closed. It looks like you're asleep. That's why they use that as a metaphor. But are you? No. The Sadducees were teaching that there is no resurrection, and Jesus corrected them and said, wait a minute, doesn't Yahweh himself say, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? He is not the God of the dead or asleep, but of the living and the awake. See, if he is currently the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it's because they're still awake worshiping him and acknowledging him as God. They're not asleep. And they have not, according to the Watchtower Society, ceased to exist, to be remembered by God some other time. Otherwise, why would their soul and spirit go up to God? They would just go into the ground just like the dog, or cat, or fish, or bird, or any other animal. Okay, I hope that answers that question. We will continue on part 8. Lord bless you till we come back together again.